something gets lost from a safe distance. And I can't put my mind to rest, and I can't help but second guess living behind this one-way mirror. I'm hypnotized by this anomaly, such strange uncharted territory. A white flag waves in the dark between my head and my heart. My armor falls apart as if I could let myself be seen, even deeply known, like I was already brave enough to let go. And now I wanna generously lose this energy that I've been hanging on to so desperately. I finally feel the universe expand. It's hidden in heartbeats, exhales, and in the hope of open hands.
Been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold, Hercules and his gifts, Spider-Man's control, and Batman with his fist. And clearly I don't see myself upon that list. But she said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss. Just something I can turn to, somebody I can kiss. I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this. I want something just like this. I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, the testaments they told, the moon and its eclipse, and Superman unrolls the suit before he lived. But I'm not the kind of person that it fits. She said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss. Just something I Where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss, just something I could turn to, somebody I could kiss. I want something just like this.
Good morning and happy Father's Day. Will y'all stand with us?
Hope we rise, we speak your name, we lift our eyes, tune our hearts into your beat. Where we walk, there you'll be. The fire in our eyes, our lives alight, in love untamed. It's blazing out, the streets will go forever bright. Your glory's breaking through the night. You will never fade away. You're never here to stay by my side. In my life, shining through me every day. You will never fade away. You're never here to stay by my side. In my life, shining through me every day. You wake within me, wake within me. You're in my heart forever. You wake within me, wake within me. You're in my heart forever. Sing it out. With fire in our eyes, our lives alight, your love untamed is blazing out. The streets will go forever bright. Your glory's breaking through the night. You will never fade away. You're never here to stay by my side. In my life, shining through me every day. You will never fade away. You're never here to stay by my side. In my life, shining through me every day. Wake within me, wake within me. You're in my heart forever. You wake within me, wake within me. You're in my heart forever.
Good morning, Discovery Church. We're so excited that you're here this morning. We're so excited to worship with you guys. And happy Father's Day. We are about to learn a new song that we've never done before. And if you don't know it, that's completely fine. That is completely okay. Because I know that you guys know how to clap. So y'all can do that. Let's go. We're strong now, shaken. We trust forever in your name, the name of Jesus. We trust the name of Jesus. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. Unmatched in all your wisdom, in love and justice you will reign. Every knee will bow. We bring our expectations. Our hope is anchored in your name, the name of Jesus. Whoa, whoa, we trust the name of Jesus. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. You are the only King forever. Almighty God, we lift you higher. You are the only King forever, forevermore. You are victorious. Come on, clap your hands.
is crowned with glory now. To him who is our peace, his final breath upon the cross is now alive in me. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Oh, our praise rise to And by your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. You stole the keys from jail, and you gave us The tomb where soldiers watched in vain was borrowed for 3 days. His body there would not remain. Our God is robbed the grave. Our God is robbed the Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ
be seated. We are going to move into a time of communion this morning, and I find it very unique that we get to do this on Father's Day. For purely my own heart, losing my dad, and this is such a replacement for that. It's a reminder for me. And I think all of us have been, at some point or another, our perspectives have been skewed of what God looks like. We don't have great relationships with our dads, or our dads are no longer here, or just there's a disconnect there. Or we have great relationships with our dads. And I think so much of who our earthly fathers are dictate who God is. And it's so easy for us to think of him as this angry, full of wrath God that watches our every move and looks at you and keeps count of your actions and your words. And I've never been more certain since my dad passed away just how untrue that is. And how God looks at each of us and sees us and goes, "You are perfect. You're everything I thought you'd be. I don't see you for what you say or how you act. I see you because I created you, and I only see how I created you." And what a blessing that is to walk in. That he gave his flesh and blood, his son, so we didn't have to suffer. And we got to walk in the grace and the mercy and the freedom that every day is new to us, and every day we're given regardless of whether we deserve it or not. He thought we deserved that. And I think we feel guilty for that. I think we take this time as a time to remember all the stuff that we do, all the mistakes that we make, and all he wants us to do is remember how much he loved us. And remember that in his sorrow of giving up his son, there was joy because he knew we didn't have to suffer. And so if you're new to DCC, there's going to be a tray that goes across the row with a little wafer and a little cup of juice. Take one of each of those and take them on your own time. We're not going to come back up and do it as a group. And if this is all really weird for you, it is okay. Just pass the tray on to the next person. There is no harm in that whatsoever. And there's going to be an opportunity at the end of service for you to ask questions if you have any. And at the end, you're going to hear those little cups crack. And it is just a symbol here that it's finished. It is done. God is not tallying our wrongs. He's not keeping track. He just wants a relationship with us. And so we're going to pray, and then we'll take in that together. Father, I thank you for being the Father that you say you are. I thank you for the freedom that we have to walk in who we are, that you look at us and you forget all the things that we do. God, I ask that in this moment, regardless of our relationship with our own Father, that you would fill the space, you would fill the gap. You would come in and just silence all the doubts we have about what you think of us. Silence the guilt. Silence the pain, if there's pain. And that you would just remind us that you cried tears of sorrow, but you cried tears of joy when you gave your son for us. Because it meant that we belonged to you, and that could never change. So Jesus, in this time, meet us where we are. And remind us that you love us and we are vital to your kingdom. That we are vital to you. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. y'all stand with us for one more song?
Grand earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred eyes are on you, and it is well with me.
Y'all can be seated.
I've been on a long road with the devil right beside me, rising with the morning sun. It's the hunger that drives me. Oh Lord, set my soul, take my pain and turn it into gold. 'Cause all I know is champion. I can take a beating, now rise again, running through the jungle until the end. I can live forever, I'll rise again, keep rising up. I'm champion. I can take a beating, now rise again, running through the jungle until the end.
You guys, I have always wanted a motorcycle. I've always wanted a motorcycle. There's one of those shots, I thought he was on a bridge earlier. No, he's just one of the dudes on the road. He's got the black helmet, and he's sitting back on the motorcycle. Man, it looks so cool. But I have people in my life who know me well enough to advise me not to have a motorcycle. Like after I graduated high school and, I'm an adult, I can get a motorcycle. My mom says, if you want to live in this house, you can't have a motorcycle. We're going to kick you out. And the rent was really cheap because it was free, so I didn't do that. And fast forward a couple years, I get married, and life's going great. And, I'm married now. I'm a man. I have a house. I can get a motorcycle. And my wife says, no. If you get a motorcycle, I'm going to stop letting you live here, is what she says. She said, I'm going to stop letting you live here. And I get where she's coming from, okay? Because I tend to be a guy. I tend to make some stupid choices sometimes. I'm just sorry, guys in the room. It's just true. So let me give you an example. A week ago, we were at camp with our high schoolers, and we had a bunch of leaders at camp, and I got excited about just being there, and we're on the field, and one of them says, "Hey, can you do a backflip, Jason?" I was like, "Yeah, I bet I could do a backflip. I've never done one before. I bet I could, but I probably shouldn't try it." And then it happened. One of these punk kids said, "I bet you can't." Watch your mouth. And I said to myself, Self, you're 30 now. Like, you don't need to prove anything. Your body doesn't heal the way that it used to. But I had in the back of my mind this punk kid saying, you can't do it. Says, all right, I'm going to try it. But I did it smart, okay? So I got two guys on either side of me so that they could help rotate me. So I made the flip around, and I kind of completed 4, okay? Landed on my feet, then go forward. I kind of did 4 in a row, and here's what one of them looked like.
1, 2, 3.
Hey. All right, backflip. I can do it. So I got excited, okay? 4 in a row. I think if I just jump higher, if I just spin a little bit more and really go for it, I can do this. And so that 5th time, I was really excited. And I jumped on 1, 2, okay? And on 2, I gave it everything I had, and they weren't ready for it, and it looked like this. Right, yeah. It hurts so bad. I think you need to watch it in slow motion. I think you need that. So here's one more time. Yeah, it came down right on my shoulder. Could have been a lot worse, but went to the hospital, and I sprained my right shoulder, and I bruised my left clavicle, and I'm sure there's plenty of you in here that can do a backflip that are like, oh, this guy. But so the guy at the hospital said, you want to go back to camp and do all this great stuff. You can't do it unless you go back with these things. And so the rest of the camp, I look like this walking around, especially with this face that I'm making in this picture here. That was me the rest of the time in camp. I was very upset, very, very embarrassed, and yeah. So that's what I did, and I bring all that up to say there's a part of me that sees like rebels are the ones who do the cool stuff. You know, they do the backflips and they go on crazy adventures and trips, and you know they have the bikes. Like those are what we see as rebels, but that's not exactly what we mean in this series by rebels. Yes, maybe rebels do that, but that's not what we mean in this series. So what do we mean? Hold on to that. I'm going to come back to it. First, I want to say good morning. Good morning. Hey, welcome. So glad that you're with us. Special welcome to all of you joining us for the first time and you joining us online. So glad that you're with us. Dad, I know that you're watching. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. And I just want to honor all the fathers in the room. Yeah. I want to honor all the fathers in the room. And here's the thing about Father's Day. I know that fathers, they hold a special place in all of our hearts. We all have dads. And here's the fact with dads. Maybe you had a great dad or maybe you didn't. Maybe you had a dad who wasn't fully present or he was mean or he was hard on you or whatever it is. This day can be hard for a lot of people. Maybe he passed away early. And so I want to take a minute to acknowledge that because there's a lot of pressure put on dads. And then also, I wasn't always the best son to my dad, right? I wasn't always the best kid, and I think some of us didn't make it easy for some of our dads. And so here's what I want to do. And knowing that, I want to celebrate and honor all the dads by asking you to stand up. Stand up. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you, dads, for all that you do. You guys are awesome. Thank you for all that you do. And stay standing. You hate me. Stay standing. I want to pray for you guys because I know that there is a lot of pressure and there's a lot of weight that goes along with this term father. And so thank you for all that you do. I want to pray for you real fast. Jesus, thank you so much for these men that you've called to lead families and to care for their kids and to raise them right. God, we know that we all make mistakes and this responsibility of being dad can be difficult. And so God, would you encourage them? Would you love them? And would you help us to celebrate them well today? In Jesus' name, amen. One more time. Give it up for these dads. Thank you. Okay, now you can sit down. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay. Yeah.
I just told these girls I'm adopting them.
Hey, great. That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, congratulations. Hey, thank you for that. Man, that's awesome. Hey, happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to you. And with being a father there and me thinking about it, there are things that we have all done where we've messed up, or we've not got it right with being a dad or being a son or whatever. I've messed up a lot of stuff. And you need to know, being here, that this is a safe place for all of your story, regardless of how it reads and no matter what you believe, even if you've got some things messed up. Because the truth is, we all have parts of our story that we wish we could go back, erase, delete, and do over, right? We wish we could change some things. Like I wish I wouldn't have done a backflip because I can't even worship today. I'm sitting up here trying to bring my arm up and I can't do it, right? But I know that there's worse stuff than that too. So you need to know all of your story is safe in this place, regardless of how it reads, even some of those more rebellious moments that you may be not proud of, nobody knows about you. And that really brings us back to the question of what do we mean by rebels in this series? Well, we mean rebels, but we mean it in a good way, right? And for the past couple weeks, Greg has been looking at a couple of people from the Bible who saw something was off in the world, and they did something. They took a stand to try to make that right and to care for people around them. And this week, I want to look at one of the most famous, I think the biggest rebel from the Bible, and his name is Jesus, right? I want to look at Jesus, and I want to call Jesus a rebel. And a couple years ago, I got really excited about thinking about Jesus as a rebel. In fact, for about 6 months, I studied it, and then about a year and a half ago, we renamed our high school community to be called Rebellion. And I got a lot of pushback on that. I got a lot of questions. Yeah, I had a lot of moms like, why you want my kid to go to Rebellion? Are you teaching them to be rebellious? You know, the word rebel doesn't mean what you think it means. And I was like, no, I think it does. I think if we really want to be like Jesus, we have to have a little bit of a rebel inside of each of us. And so here's what it means. We wrote it down. And we have it on the website in different places, but we said this: a rebellion in the beginning is a small group of people with an unrelenting ideal or belief standing in opposition to an existing status quo. And when Jesus came, he started the greatest revolution of love that this world has ever seen. It started small, but he has had a big impact. He was controversial, countercultural, and challenging to everyone around him. He took in tax collectors, fishermen, harlots, and men and women that were considered the worst of the worst that nobody wanted, and he loved them. He lived with them and he trained them. Jesus was the original rebel. And if we really want to be like this guy, Jesus, there has to be a little rebel inside of all of us. So we're going to pick up right where Greg left off last week, where he said, rebels never quit. What do rebels never quit doing? And if we really want to look like him, and that means being a rebel, what does that look like for me? That's what we're chasing after today. And so if you have a Bible, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 23. If you don't, we'd love to give you one. They have a bunch back on the tables. We have everything on the screens. Plenty of ways to follow along. You can download our app. You can follow along with us like that. And before we jump in, you need to know a little bit of the backstory to Matthew chapter 23, okay? For 3 years of his life, Jesus has lived with his guys that are closest to him, his followers, men and women who followed with him, and he's living life with them, loving people with them, caring for people. And this story that we're about to walk into comes at the very end of that. It's just a couple nights before he was going to be betrayed and then crucified. And this is his last public message that we have, okay? The last time that we have in the Bible where he is talking to crowds of people. And he's about to piss some people off. That's about what's going to happen. We're going to walk in and jump in right there. Matthew chapter 23, verse 1 says this, Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything that they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries, and a phylactery was this leather pouch that they would tie up. They would roll up little pieces of scripture, and they would put this leather pouch on their arms or on their heads, all to be seen. They would tie those things up, their phylacteries. They'd make them wide, and their tassels on their garments long. They loved the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They loved to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. He's saying these guys are in it all for the looks, to look a certain way and to be seen a certain way. And he says, do what they say because it's important, but what they're doing, that's not what we came for. No, just a couple verses later in verse 11, he says this, The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And here's what he just did. Okay, the world has this idea of leadership. Religious leaders, they had this idea of leadership. It was top-down leadership. And up to this point, you didn't question somebody who was in charge, a religious leader or otherwise. You didn't give feedback, and you didn't really care for the people that were under you. No, and Jesus came, and he washed people's feet. And he hung out with people that nobody was even willing to touch, and he loved them, and he cared for them. And what he did was, in that moment, he was inventing what humility is. And he turning everything upside down on its head and saying, if you want to be a good leader, religious leader, or leader of family, or whatever it is, you got to be a good servant. That's what he's saying. And he's talking to people, okay? It's a crowd, people who do believe in God, don't believe in God, but religious leaders too. And to this whole crowd, he's saying, hey, here's these guys. And what if, yes, he's angry? And it sounds like he's angry in a lot of this chapter, but what if he's also feeling something a little bit different? What if he sees some guys who got into it for the right reasons because they love God and they want to love people, but somehow, some way along the way, they got it screwed up, and they round up trying to make it about themselves and looking a certain way and presenting a certain way and making sure that they had everything on the outside all put together. And what if he is right now starting to, with his last public message, trying to fight for their hearts one last time? What if he's saying, you got it wrong. See, you've made it about something that it was never about, because what he's really saying is it's not about position or power or popularity. It's not about position or power or popularity. And these religious leaders, okay, the Pharisees, they needed to hear that. But he's saying it to a whole crowd full of people. I think he's saying it to them in front of a whole crowd of people because it doesn't matter what our job is or what we've been called to. That's something that we all need to hear. When I was in college, I pledged into this fraternity, and we had a lot of fun. Not that kind of fun, okay? So it wasn't that kind of fraternity. It was like all guys who wanted to follow Jesus, and really about just like having good friends that were going to encourage each other. And we started growing. We had like 50 guys, and then 60 guys, and 70 guys. And I got it in my head that I wanted to be the president of our little fraternity because I thought that'd be cool. And so I ran for president, and I didn't get it. There's 3 guys in the running, and I got last. Okay, so we had a president and a vice president and then this guy who didn't get anything. It was me. And I'm so glad that I did not get president, because one month, our president or vice president, they weren't able to go to some of the meetings that we had or whatever, and they asked me to go in their stead. And so for the next week to week and a half or so, I was going to these meetings. And I was trying to plan things and do all this stuff, and I hated it. If you know anything about me, I hate details. I hate planning. I hate doing all that stuff. It's just real about me. And as soon as they were back, I was so happy to give them back the job of being president because I didn't want the job. No, what I wanted was the power that came with it, or the popularity, or the position, right? And there's something in my heart that has to be kept in check. And I don't think that I'm the only one, because when I graduated and I was a bartender and then bar manager, restaurant manager, I remember calling meetings just so that people would come around and I'd have something to say. But the whole point of the meeting when I was a restaurant manager was to make sure everybody knew that I was the guy in charge. Right? That's not good of me. There's parts of me in work world or family or whatever it is I have to keep in check because I can easily make it about popularity or power or position. And I wish I could say that I have that all figured out, but I have to be honest with you. I'm here, I'm working at this church. I've been here for 4 years, and there have been times when I've been more excited to be seen or heard than I have to tell people about the love of Jesus and the hope of who he is. Right? And that's messed up. And telling you that, and admitting that to you, it feels like I'm being caught with my pants down. Right? That's what it feels like, because there's a part of my heart that I have to keep in check, because if not, I could get out of the way. And what Jesus is saying here in this passage is he's saying, you have a desire to be great, to be somebody in the world. It's not necessarily that desire that's wrong or the job that's wrong, but our hearts can be twisted and make it about that popularity or position or whatever it is. And he's saying it's not about that. And what he's not saying is we need to take these religious leaders, we need to take all the leaders in culture and stone them. No, I think what he's doing here in this passage is I think he's saying, man, you guys have gone down the wrong path, kind of like a horse. Right? Kind of like a horse. You need to slow down or stop. I don't know anything about riding horses. I think I've ridden maybe 2 in my entire life, and people have told me how to do it, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's like when a horse goes down the wrong way, you stop them and you course correct. See, it's so easy for our hearts to get off, and that's what he's saying. And he goes on in verse 25, and he says, woe. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. You clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites. A lot of people call church people hypocrites, right? Well, Jesus is too. He is calling them out. You hypocrites, you are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness. I was thinking, what was going through these religious leaders' minds as he was talking to them? They had to feel like they were being accused, like they were being called out, because they were. But what if it was more than that? What if it was more than just being called out? What if he was also trying to love them and say, hey, you look great on the outside, but inside I know that you're a broken, jacked up mess. I came in yesterday. It was a Saturday afternoon, and on Thursday I had a cup of coffee, and I put cream in that coffee, and it was delicious. I didn't do anything with it on Friday, and on Saturday I came in pretty late. I wasn't in the office a whole lot. When I came into my office yesterday, it stank. It was disgusting. It was nasty. And I went to go get a cup of coffee, and I went to go get my favorite cup, and it's a giant cup, because I like a lot of coffee, okay? And I got this thing, and it was nasty. It was disgusting. I didn't take that cup around and drink from it or whatever, because it was nasty. I don't want to get sick. It was gross. You can have some if you want, but I didn't want to. So here's what I did. I took that cup, and I went and put it in the sink back here in the kitchen for somebody else to clean. I took that cup, and I cleaned it out myself very nicely and neatly, and I made sure it was dry, and I put it upside down so that somebody else could use it. That's exactly what I did, okay? I do a pretty good job of that, but if my wife were here, she would tell you, you could work on that at home. You can work on that at home a little bit, right? And that's what he's saying. He's saying, I care about what's on the inside of your heart, what's on the inside of the cup. Your outside may look great, but what's going on in here? And what he's really saying, what Jesus was really about, was Jesus wants our heart. He wants my heart, not my behavior. Okay, Jesus wants my heart, not my behavior. Yes, he wants me to act right and do good things and be the person that he outlines or that the Bible outlines. But here's the thing, if our hearts were right and they were his, would our behavior matter? Right? In the chapter just before this, it's Matthew chapter 22. Somebody asked him, what's the greatest commandment of all time? He says, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And then next he says, if you do these things, there will be a fulfillment of the law. You don't even need the law. If our hearts were right, then what we did would just naturally be right because we'd be loving God and we would be loving people. He's after our hearts. That same camp that I told you about that I did the backflip at, stupid, silly me, right? I should not try to be proving myself, right? I should get over that. I should grow. But there's this guy part of me. Anyway, that same camp, we were asked to split up and volunteer in different ways and help out with these students. And so one of the volunteer jobs that I was assigned was I was asked to facilitate this game, and it was called King of the Circle. Right, and these different groups of students would come, and the King of the Circle, they would put on these huge bubble balls. And if you haven't seen them, they're about 5 feet wide. They're full of air, and you can run into each other as fast as you want. And they just kind of bounce off each other and bounce harmlessly off the grass, unless they get stuck upside down, and then you laugh. I mean, then you push them back over, and you have everything. But the game was to fight against each other and push each other out. And there was a clear rule that when the game was over, or before the game was over, if the horn blew, because we have to like switch them around to where they're going, you can't hold them up. And even in the middle of the game, you have to end it. Or at the beginning of the game, you have to end it. Well, there's this group that came up, and they were hanging out, and they went to the game, and they had a student with them with Down syndrome. And they were trying to encourage him, and they were trying to love on him, and they were like, hey, you should participate in these games. You should do this. You'd really like this one. And they finally got up. He got the courage to try it. And he's trying to get in there, and it took him a couple minutes to get in. And so he lost a little bit of time, and they're pushing him up to stand him up, and the horn blew. And I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know everything that is expected of me, and I know that I'm going to be breaking the rules a little bit, but I let the game happen, and it was a super long game. I felt really bad, and the director started coming to me, and she was like, this should never happen again. She didn't know what was happening, okay? Because I knew what was going on at the camp. The whole purpose of that camp was to love on students and care for people and show the love of Jesus with no strings attached. Right? And one thing that we were doing is trying to have everybody have games. And so the rules went out the window for me because here's this opportunity to love on this kid with Down syndrome, right? And you should have heard his group like cheering him on, how excited they were for him. That was the heart of what the whole camp was about, right? And I'm sure that if she knew why I did what I did, she would understand why I made that call, right? And I'm not saying, look at me, I'm some great hero because of it. This is all an example of how little things, and this was a little thing, little things that we do with our heart, even if they're not the right behavior or whatever, if we have Jesus at the center, that's what it's all about because he wants my heart and not my behavior. And here's these guys who did everything right to the letter of the law, to the T, and he's saying, you're doing that, but your hearts are jacked up. Your hearts aren't right. What if you got your hearts aligned? And for about 36 verses with this group speech, he's been talking to them in front of all this crowd, but he realizes that there's other people there too, and he's trying to care for all their hearts. And so he turns his attention from talking to them to start to talk to them, and he says this in verse 37. He says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. And anytime there's two words back to back, it means great feeling, great emotion is behind these words. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who sent you. How often have I longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house has left you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name, for the name of the Lord. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And he's saying, I've been here. I've wanted to help you. I've wanted to love you, whether you have loved God or not, and you haven't turned to me. He says, how are your houses doing? They are left desolate. He's saying, how is life turning out for you? I have wanted to help you in all of this, and you have not turned to me. And really what he's saying is, he compares himself to a hen, right? I don't know much about chickens except for our neighbor just got some really loud chickens in a chicken coop right behind us, and I'm feeling like we're about to start smelling those chickens, but we haven't yet. But I looked up what it looks like to raise chickens and everything like that, and the most protective, the loudest, the meanest chickens are called the broody hens. They're like the mama bears of the chickens, right? And they're going to do everything they can to protect and care for and take those, and they'll even find eggs who are left on their own, and they will go so far as to pluck out their own feathers so that those eggs have a close proximity so that they can get the heat and the warmth from their body. And he's saying, like that is how I've wanted to love you. This is how I've wanted to care for you, right? And I know when I call Jesus like a mama bear chicken, it kind of sounds funny, but that's what he's saying. This is how I've wanted to care for you. This is how I've wanted to care for you. And when Jesus came into this world, he saw how the church was acting and behaving, how they were caring, how they were loving. He said, you've got it a little bit wrong. You've made it about behavior and looking a certain way. He said, this isn't right. He saw the world and he said, I see the hurt and the jacked up pain and everybody messed up. This isn't right either. And he said, none of this is right. So I'm going to go in this new direction. And I want as many of you to follow me as want. But rather than tell people what to do and make sure that their behavior is right, be the behavior police, we're going to love people. We're going to do something different. We're going to introduce humility. And as many of you who want, you can come with me. And that's what he's saying. He was this rebel. And what he did was he was fighting for people. And rebels fight for people that no one else will. Rebels fight for people that no one else will. In the movie Rogue One, Jyn Erso, it's a Star Wars story. Jyn has her dad who becomes this mass murderer. He creates this Death Star, and what it does is it can destroy planets. And there's this moment where she realizes this is not right. And he had given her a plan, and she says, I want to get all these people together so that this pain that could be caused doesn't happen. And she tries to rally everybody together, and this is what happens. Watch this.
We must scatter the fleet. We have no recourse but to surrender.
Are we really talking about disbanding something that we've worked so hard to create?
We can't just give in.
We joined an alliance, not a suicide pact.
We've only now managed to gather our forces.
Gather our forces? General Draven's already blown up an Imperial base.
A decision needed to be made.
If it's war you want, you'll fight alone.
If that's how it's going, why have an alliance at all?
If she's telling the truth, we need to act now.
Councillors, please.
It is simple. The Empire has the means of mass destruction. The rebellion does not.
A Death Star? This is nonsense.
What reason would my father have to lie? What benefit would it bring him?
To lure our forces into a final battle to destroy us once and for all.
Risk everything. Based on what? The testimony of a criminal. The dying words of her father, an Imperial scientist.
But don't forget the Imperial pilot.
My father gave his life so that we may have a chance to defeat this.
So you've told us.
If the Empire has this kind of power, what chance do we have?
What chance do we have? The question is what choice? Run, hide, plead for mercy, scatter your forces. You give way to an enemy this evil with this much power, and you condemn the galaxy to an eternity of submission. The time to fight is now.
Yes.
Every moment you waste is another step closer to the ashes of Jeddah.
What is she proposing? Just let the girl speak.
Send your best troops to Scarif. Send the rebel fleet if you have to. You need to capture the Death Star plans if there's any hope of destroying it.
You're asking us to invade an Imperial installation based on nothing but hope.
Rebellions are built on hope.
There is no hope.
I say we fight.
I say the rebellion is finished.
I'm sorry, Jyn. Without the full support of the Council, the odds are too great.
Here's this woman, yes, good movie, yeah. Here's this woman rising up to do what she knows is right. She's trying to take a stand and fight for, and they're scared of how powerful the force against them is, and so they decide, we're not going to go with you. It's too great. But she says, in the middle of that, she says, yeah, our chances aren't that small, but it's not about what chance we have, it's about what choice do we have. Okay, take the sci-fi, the Star Wars out of it. Maybe Star Wars isn't your thing. When people rise up for the things that are right, they are greatly opposed by people who agree with them and people who don't. Because changing things is difficult. Being a source of change, a catalyst of change, is a difficult thing, and we are opposed. We're opposed. Doing the right thing can be difficult, especially if everybody is stuck in what they are. My wife works for the Exodus Road. The Exodus Road is an organization that we partner with, and they are looking around the world to free victims of human trafficking, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking and all that. There's 45 million slaves in today, modern-day slaves. And so she's working to do that. And about a year and a half ago, she was asked to go to Thailand and India and be a representative, be a storyteller, and learn more about the problem and interview investigators. And so as a part of that, she said, hey, Jay, do you want to come with me? And so I went over with her, and we spent 14 days over there. And together, we went into brothels, we went into places that I would have never imagined myself to be, saw so much pain and so much hurt and so many difficult things that I'm not going to talk about right now, but the main job of what we went over there for was to interview the investigators who had made it their full-time job to go into places where they were terrified that they would be recognized, that they'd be seen. They were putting their lives on the line and their families on the line, and as we interviewed these 30 or so investigators in India and Thailand, one thing was constant: they were afraid of what would happen. And there was one guy that we interviewed, his name was Ari. And Ari was this Indian man, he was 26 at the time, he's 27 now, and he had a wife, he had 2 kids. And he just talked about how much fear he had going in every night, because it's not just him he's putting at risk, it's his wife and kids too. And he'd been doing it for 4 years. This 26-year-old dude, younger than me. And Laura Parker, co-founder of the Exodus Road, she said, why do you do what you do? And he said, well, growing up, I was friends with all these girls and boys, and we started noticing that they were being taken from our villages. They were being taken from our villages, and a lot of his friends had gone missing, and he got into it to find some of his friends, some of the girls who had been taken, and try to free them. And along the way, he had been a part of freeing a lot of others too. And that's what and then she asked him the next question. She said, why do you think that more people in the world are not rising up to do something about this? And he said very simply, he said, there are good people and there are bad people. And when the good people are sleeping, that's when the bad people are doing what they're doing. And a lot of the good people are too concerned to not get dirty and look like a bad person, so they don't go to where the bad people are. And him saying that broke me, right? Because there is a part of us, there is a part of me that would rather stay clean and rather stay right and make sure that I have the right behavior and make sure that I'm not putting myself in a situation where I could be thought of as wrong or where I could be twisted. And look, I have a history, 14 to 24, I struggle with pornography. And so even going over there, and I've had a lot of freedom in that, I've seen a lot of freedom from that. Even going over there was scary for us. And we said, we don't want to be the good people who are not willing to walk into bad places. And who Jesus is calling us to be is that rebel who walks into the places that no one else is willing to go, does the things that nobody else is willing to do for the sake of people that no one is fighting for. And if we really want to look like this Jesus guy, that's what it looks like for us. And I know the excuses. I'm not good enough. My story is too broken. I don't know enough about Jesus or about the Bible to be really able to help somebody. I can't do that. I know all those excuses because I've made them too. But if we want to be the rebel that Jesus was, that he's calling us to be, we have to be willing to do some hard things and walk into some places that nobody wants to be. And so what does this look like for you and for me? Right? If we want to be a rebel like Jesus, that's what he's calling us to be, what does that look like? Well, first, the first person I think that nobody is fighting for, what if that first person is me, is ourselves? Right? What if the person who nobody is fighting for in our lives is really me? And my heart is jacked up, or there's things going on in my world that I don't want to talk about, that nobody knows, or there's things going on inside of you. You know what's going on. I don't know your story or how you walked in today, what's going on in your marriage or in your life or how things are blowing up. But what if today is the day where you say, I need to start fighting for myself? And when we say, hey, you can pray underneath these screens to my left and my right, what if today is the day where it's like, I don't know what this whole thing is about. Maybe I don't agree with or get this whole God guy, but I know that I need help. And maybe it's time to say, I need counseling, professional help too. What if the first person to fight for that no one else is ourselves? And what if next, it means walking into the hard conversations or walking into the conflict that we would rather avoid and not talk about or not deal with some of our closest friends or our family. That, you know, everything is just getting along right now. We're going along to get along. If we just talk about this thing that's causing all the conflicts, things are going to get worse. What if it means walking into that hard conversation? Or what if it means finding 1 or 2 people that you don't know, that you know and you see around you that are hurting, and you can tell they don't have anybody fighting for them? What if it looks like having the courage to just walk into their lives and just listen and just care for them. And I'm not saying the whole city of Colorado Springs. Here's the thing about Jesus. Yes, he was Son of God and he was Son of Man, but he walked the streets and he walked by a lot of people. Okay, he helped a lot of people, cared for a lot of people, but for everybody he walked by, there had to be more that he walked by. And he said no to a lot of people. He didn't say yes to everyone. That should be relieving to us. It's not meaning that we need to rescue a whole city, but it means that we should do and we can do what we can do. And we should go out, we should be rebels. We should be fighting for people that no one else will. Jesus, we need your help in doing that. God, we need your help in pressing it into even our own stories, our own lives, the things that are going on in our own world, God. And we know that we are all broken, jacked up messes, and we need more of you. And so we need help with us. And God, we want to know what it means to look more of a rebel like you. Give us the heart checks, God. Call us out when we're headed down the wrong road. Use people in our lives to do that. God, help us to look more like you and showing us what it means to be a rebel that looks like you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, hey, thanks for being here today. So glad, so pumped that you were with us today. If you have questions about this place, you can go out the doors, turn left. People in the garage would love to answer your questions. If something stirred in you and you need prayer, or maybe it's a Wild at Heart or a group, there'll be people underneath these screens to my left and my right. They would love to pray with you, talk with you, listen to you, whatever's going on in your world. We don't pass a tray or a bucket. We don't like to put pressure on people, but if you want to jump on mission with us, the mission of redefining Christian, loving people, caring for people in Springs, you can drop money in those boxes on the way out. Thanks for being here today. I'm going to be out by the fireplace. Love to talk to you, get to know a little bit of your story. Happy Father's Day to you fathers. Have a great week.
A piece for the hurt I have buried deep inside. Knees on the floor, I finally found everything I needed. You lifted my soul and opened up my eyes. And I never knew anything was forever till I found you, till I found you. I never dreamed anything could be better till I found you, till I found you. You rewriting my story, and I'm brand new like a morning. No, I never knew anything lasts forever till I found you, till I found you, till I found you, till I found you. Gone all the days I'm chasing after what won't last. I'm done with building these castles that crumble like sand. Oh, knees on the floor, I finally found that everything I needed was always right in front of me. You gave me a name and you changed everything, yeah, yeah. Dreamed anything could be better till I found that it comes alive beneath the broken sky. John Perkins said it right. Love is the final fight. Let it rise above, rise above. There is no soul louder than love. And this is the sound of a heartbeat. This is the sound from the discontented rose of a holy nation. We are the voice of breaking down. Can you hear me? This is the sound of a desperation born by our own collisions. We are the voice of breaking down. Let it rise above, up from the ground. Can't drown it out. Can you hear it now? This is the sound of a heartbeat. This is the sound from the discontented rose of a holy nation. We are the voice of breaking down. Can you hear me? This is the sound of a desperation born by a fallen condition. We are the voice of breaking down. This is the sound. This is the sound. They say this lasts forever. That's just what I'm afraid of. I'll never dance like this again. She smiled like a Georgia sun.